The talk show came about here in Seattle because the long-standing news station decided to flip over to the FM side of the dial, and they wanted to go all sports. And they wanted to go all sports right at the time, well, when the economic community hit rock bottom, and they wanted to go against a sports station in this town that had been bedrock for 20 years. So not always and not the easiest of starts, I think, for both the station and certainly for me and my co-host and the rest of the station. There were some starts, there were some stops, there were some challenges. There were some pretty poor ratings in the early going, but thankfully there was some patience. Thankfully there was some time. Thankfully the Seahawks have become a really, really entertaining team to follow. And thankfully with 6 years of experience, we're a whole lot further down the road now than certainly where we started 6 years ago. That's a great question. How much say and influence did I have on my very first co-host? Well, we had eight or nine different people came in to do a demo with me, and I didn't know where I would fit. The station had a pretty good idea that they were going to run national programming, and they were going to start as a station with two local shows. The afternoon show with Kevin Calabro was booked, and they had a pretty good sense for that. What exactly 11 to 3 was going to look like with me and whomever, or without me and whomever, well, that's where the fun began. So I did a demo with 8 different people. There was a guy that came in here from country music. There was a news talk. There were a couple from the local sports station. There was folks from all over the country, Boston, LA, Wisconsin, here in Seattle. And I did all these demos, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just a little reel, like a talk radio segment. I had no idea what I was doing. Most of these people had some experience. So we come in, we do the demos, we do it all. And I remember sitting in then with the program director, the general manager, the big boss at the station, and we sat down and they were kind of asking me for my feedback and said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, such and such is pretty good. And yeah, that felt pretty good. And the chemistry I thought was pretty good here. But man, that one guy from the East Coast, I did not connect with him at all. I just didn't feel it. So, well, guess who they paired me with? That one guy from the East Coast that I didn't feel like I had any chemistry or connection with. And thankfully they did, because two worlds kind of came to life. Took, I said, some starts and some stops and some poor ratings and some real patience. But over time, thankfully, we became the #1 show in the market and are really pushing and challenging to get back to that spot. Yeah, the great thing about a quarterback is you look into a camera just like this on every play, but it's not just a lens, it's 10 different guys in a huddle. And yes, that was back in the day when they do huddle in football. I realize a lot of it is all hand signals and cadence now with the no huddle system, but I always loved walking in that huddle and looking at my linemen or looking at the running backs and just looking into guys' eyes. And there was just I think a real natural feel of leadership with that position, and maybe even beyond leadership, just relationship, wanting to connect with people. And that's what this job is about. If you want to get into media, I think it is critically important that you have an understanding that you need to connect. It's not just your knowledge. It's not just your entertainment value. It's your ability in radio more than any other. Tony Kornheiser said it right. Radio is the most personal medium there is in media, and I fully believe that now, being engrossed in it for 6 years, and you got to be able to connect. So I think the greatest thing for me playing that position of leadership, or even more, that position of relationship, is your ability to really connect with people. And I think if you're going to have success in this industry, typically you're going to be pretty good at that. The biggest challenge for me in doing a daily talk show is just finding that footing with my co-host. I mean, there's just no debate about it. I'm so thankful now that they paired me with a guy that was 180 degrees different from me in every single way. Ideologically, family, background, East Coast, West Coast, in every way, he could not be wired any more differently than me. And to find a level of common ground, that first year was tough. I mean, we were at each other's throats. We were both highly competitive guys. We both wanted to win our arguments in the biggest of ways and the loudest of ways. And it wasn't always an environment that was conducive to what I said to you earlier about relationship. And it really wasn't until he and I got away, got out of the studio, got out of the lights, spent some time together, totally away from the job, that we started to take some of those baby steps to connect and realize that, man, if we're going to do this and we're going to have some level of success and we're going to keep our job, then we need to find some common ground here. together and be both in it to win. You know, that team concept, right? There's no I in team. Well, in this business, it can be highly competitive. It can be really, really volatile. It can be guys looking out for number one and what's best for them. But the neat thing about radio, and especially like our pairing and having a co-host, man, you both have got to be on the same page together to win. And when you do that, you have a chance for success. But I certainly didn't learn that going in. That was really only learned through experience and at times the hard way. Yeah, the radio business is real easy. You walk in the door at 6:59, the light goes on at 7, I leave at 10, and I'm done until 6:59 a.m. the next day. Nope, that's not true. And I remember pretty vividly sitting down for coffee right up the road here from our station and sitting with the general manager in this building who's been in radio a long time. And I said, Dave, how much prep is it going to take me on a day-to-day basis? And he said, by the end, or as you get going, you're going to learn your whole life is prep. That your life stories and your circumstances and your family and your job and your past and all of those things go into what you do on a daily basis on the radio. And you've got to watch games and you've got to study and I'm up every night for an hour and a half trying to put my thoughts together for the next day. And we'll walk in here a couple hours before our show begins and really lay out our show. So yeah, it is a lot of hours. It's a lot of passive hours of just living your life and finding a way to bring that from an entertainment standpoint to your audience. And then, there's the nitty gritty. There's the preparation, right? There's the separation comes in the preparation and making sure that you're up and you're on it. Because if you're not in this information age that we live in and you're not following, people will find it out and call it out very, very quickly. What else did I need to learn that I didn't know how to do going into the business? Man, that is an ever-evolving question. And there is really no great answer. I don't sit here 6 years in and say, yep, here's all the answers. I feel pretty strongly with some of the convictions I've already shared with you about relationship, about connection, about chemistry, and some of the selflessness that I think it requires in this job, and especially in this one with a microphone every day, connecting with your audience. But it is really the exciting thing about radio is it is always moving. It is always evolving. It's like the NFL in that way. You can never, ever stand pat. So we have a great quarter. So we have a great year. So the ratings are through the roof. Well, all of a sudden you can be humbled pretty quickly as those meters turn over and ratings turn over and circumstances may turn over or my co-host may leave for another job. So, I guess in many ways, like the NFL, you got to be constantly nimble and fluid and move. You got to be constantly critiquing, I think, your job and your work and be willing to be coachable and continue to move that story forward. So I've learned an awful lot about what I didn't know going in, and I've got an awful lot more still to learn.